Welcome to RGN, the regular guy news, the least pretentious name in news. We're coming at you admitting that we barely know what we are talking about. Hello, I am Dan Black. I will be your news anchor, your Sherpa for the news this evening. And here's what I think. Before we get into it, our extremely interesting, confusing topic for today. I would like to tell everyone that this podcast is grassroots. If you want to support this podcast, it's really easy. Two ways. One way is give us 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you leave a comment in there, I am obliged to read it on the podcast. Most of you have just been rating it and not writing comments, so that is great. That's great because those still count. Appreciate that. And also, this podcast is word of mouth. Tell one friend about the podcast if you enjoy it. Before we get into all the least pretentious news, and the news is changing by the second in today's day and times, today being September 22nd, 2020, already September. Already almost October somehow in this year 2020, the year that never happened, what I'm calling it. But before we talk about this topic, I got to introduce out in the field today our only RGN news correspondent, Erin Finnerty, out in the field somewhere out in USA or the world today. Let's see where she is. Let's check in with her. Erin, are you there?
Hello, Dan. I'm here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Erin,
Dan,
great to have you. Where are you in the world right now?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles, California, my apartment, approximately 1 mile from your apartment.
Okay, so again, coming at us from the same exact location. I'm
Same
surprising.
exact, identical.
I thought this might have been the week where you switched locations and maybe,
No.
I don't know, explore the earth, look for news around the world. But
well, I'm actually embedded here right now. It's impossible for me to leave. So here I am, week 8.
Yeah, that'll happen in a pandemic, Erin.
Yes.
So listen, before we get into today's topic, Erin, we have a way to interact with the listeners of this podcast because, we could like any old news program, but they just lecture you. They talk at you. We offer you the opportunity to be part of the news at regularguynews@gmail.com. Shoot us an email, hit us up at the Regular Guy News mailbag, and you can ask us a question, tell us something, and interact with us. Don't get offended by something we say. Get involved. Okay? Erin, anything in the mailbag? Is the mailbag overflowing this week?
Oh, well, Dan, I took a peek into the mailbag before I hopped on air here, and it's a little empty this week, but we have one item in the mailbag.
Right. Now, just for the people, a full mailbag would be 2 emails.
Two.
For us, because we
emails
have a very small server.
Jam-packed.
Yeah.
But one is kind of
One
like
is almost empty. It barely makes sense.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do we got, Erin?
Today, we have a return mailbag guest.
A bagger.
Yeah, a return bagger. Sean W. Sean Wasatuya, who you may recall from previous week's mailbag entries.
Yes, I remember Sean.
Yes.
Me and Sean had a nice interaction.
Very nice.
He gave us an
good.
Unnecessary apology.
Mm-hmm.
But we're
He's
trying to
back
have
again.
hard conversations, so I appreciate it. So what is Sean? What is Sean putting to us this week?
Well, Sean has a little bit of feedback on our episode last week, which dealt with climate change and the planet. Sean W. writes, "Hi guys, I'd like to chime in on a few things. Number one, it's too late to prevent climate change. The ship has sailed on that one. What we can do is mitigate the damage. If you knew you were going to crash into an iceberg, wouldn't you at least pack a bunch of extra lifeboats? It's damage mitigation at this point. We have to make people understand that global warming is locked in place, but we can stave off its worst effect. Number two, this ties into global warming as well as Biden. I firmly believe that Biden is better than Trump on climate science, even though he won't introduce robust legislation like the Green New Deal.
Right.
We need to hold our officials accountable, especially if they're candidates we would really prefer not to vote for, because then they'd get us closer to our goals. If Al Gore had won the presidency 20 years ago, he wouldn't have done the sweeping economic changes we need to really combat global warming. But he would have capped the oil companies and the fossil fuel industry, as well as boost the solar energy years before Obama. This would then force Obama to make even more aggressive moves. The point I'm making is, yes, Biden is milquetoast and backwards on a lot of issues, but we need him in office, and then we need to push him. Thanks for reading. And Dan, this note from Sean W. brings me to a great point. Do you know what today is?
What is today?
Today is Tuesday, but it's also National Voter Registration Day.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh wow. That's huge. That's huge to lock in. I didn't know that.
RGN non-exclusive. So I'd like to encourage all of our listeners, if you care about climate change and you agree with what Sean W. has to say here, go to iwillvote.com, I believe is the website. And you can look up your voter registration in your state, any state, and confirm if you're registered to vote. And if not, you can do it. I think the deadline in California is October 19th, but you can find all that out for your state at iwillvote.com.
Right. That's great. So, and what was the? Okay, so yeah, and that will tell if I'm just a regular guy, right? Which is where we're and by the way, for people new to this podcast, we're just literally not pretending we know everything, not falling into this trap of needing to feel like I'm some pseudo intellectual because I have a podcast. No, I'm a guy with a podcast.
That we don't know anything.
Right. The only thing I am is a news junkie. I like the news. I like watching the news. I like being informed, and I find it difficult to be adequately informed just by watching the news. Now, so I look into stuff, and I read a maximum of 2 articles. Everybody knows that. So, Aaron, here's my question to you: is if I wanted to vote in any state, could I go to that website, and then that'll help me register to vote in any state?
In any state. You go online and you can select I'm a resident of blank and put your state in there. Delaware, Mississippi, Michigan, whatever. And it'll give you all your resources to check if you're registered to vote. And if you're not, you can access links to register to vote, get your vote by mail ballot, find out how to vote in person, whatever.
Speaking of voting, if you saw that voting is open, the general election has already begun. You can vote already, and Virginia was one of the first states to be open. And did you see those lines to vote?
I did not.
There's videos, people in line for hours to vote. Huge lines. Voter, I think listen, I might be wrong, but I have this feeling voter turnout this year is I think is going to surpass expectations, Yeah,
I mean, this is a whole different ball game than it has been in previous elections.
I think Democratic voter turnout is going to be off the charts this election. I think that's what they're not accounting for is that the referendum on Trump is going to be huge, I think. Now, that's just going off gut again. I don't know, but I do believe that's what's like how last time they underestimated how many votes Trump would get. The silent, that silent minority, right? But who voted for Trump? I think that it's going to be a huge, huge surge of votes against Trump.
Absolutely.
Now,
I mean, hopefully.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm just calling that now. I have no fucking the whole premise of this podcast. I have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. Let's just hang out together and wallow in the question mark, the beauty of the question mark. But yeah, I think Virginia is already showing that people are fired up to vote. They've been sitting at home this year and they got opinions. They want to be heard. So it's hard. It's hard to imagine anyone I know not voting this year. Like, even the most lax people, I can't imagine they're like, I'm not going to flex my right to vote. Like, I think this is the only year that I can think of in my whole life, including the Iraq War, post 9/11, where people are like, I need to be involved. Like, I cannot just sit back. You
There's
know?
definitely like a sense of urgency when it comes to voting, like hence the lines, because I remember in 2008, people were really mobilized to vote for Barack Obama, but it was like, cool, I'm going to vote for Barack. It wasn't like I
Right.
will wait in line all friggin' day, uh, you know, to make my voice heard. So I think
Right.
it's definitely different this year.
So, I mean, obviously, we'll see. And not to
Yeah.
mention, there's so many other question marks with this election, which is, you know, what's going to happen with the mail and what happens with how long it takes to actually call it. And will Trump say, I won, because he might have more people who go to the polls for him because those people don't care about coronavirus. And then he could claim it that night because he's already saying we need a winner that night, which for some reason matters to him. And he's pretending like it's a necessary precedent or something to have the winner that night when they don't get inaugurated for a couple months. So I don't know what he's talking about, but we'll see what happens. All things considered. Aaron, before we talk about the topic at hand here, and this is truly the only topic at hand, and if you needed any kind of gauge of how fast the news is moving, last week we talked about global warming because like my home state here, not my birth home state, but the state I live in now, it was on fire. And boy, oh boy, that was global warming. I felt like everyone was like, wow, look at the effects of global warming. Look at all these storms that are touching down. And then literally mere days later, the whole conversation shifted again to this topic, which is the Supreme Court. And in the wake of it, we also passed 200,000 deaths by the coronavirus. I mean, this year is just unfucking believable. You know,
Yes.
the way how fast the news is moving, and that is to be honest, that is to Trump's benefit. I mean, the amount of stuff that just goes under the radar. I mean, like
like things. There's a lot of things that you can easily forget about when there's major news happening every week, like fires, Supreme Court. Don't forget the things that Trump said about the military.
Right. Now, before we get into that topic, I just want to say, as a news junkie, as someone who's watching the news all the time, I don't know if right now the news is more depressing than the commercials on these news channels. I mean,
during this time,
I mean,
we're here for you.
These honestly, when it goes to commercial on like a CNN or an MSNBC or whatever, Fox News, all these channels, if it goes to commercial, like you got to change the channel stat. It is depressing, and not just the commercials that are like Corona based or commercials that are like every commercial is like in these tough times, like all those ones.
Yeah.
You know, forget about those ones, or even the ones that are depressing, which is like a St. Jude's Children's Hospital or
Animal Rescue.
Or Animal Rescue. Forget those. The products are so depressing. Like Car Shield and like all that kind of
I'm seeing a lot of Car Shield. I'm seeing a lot of like prescription drug ads like Humira.
Like reverse mortgages. Like what's his name? That actor with the mustache, like the
actor with the mustache.
When he's like, "This isn't my first rodeo," and he's got the mustache.
I don't know.
You know the guy. He's in Blue Bloods. Why am I blanking on his name? He's got the great mustache. All right, someone's going nuts. What I'm doing that. Anyway,
Blue Bloods.
You gotta look this up. Blue Bloods. Blue Bloods.
Favorite show, Blue Bloods.
There he is. He's just pictures right. How am I forgetting this guy's name? Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck.
Oh my God! I should have known. He's like famous for his mustache.
Yeah, I don't know how to forget
Monica's
Tom
boyfriend
Selleck.
from Friends.
Monica boyfriend from Friends, and also he's
Magnum PI.
Funny. He's got a funny little storyline in the comeback. You never see him, but she's Lisa Kudrow is calling Tom Selleck. Anyway, Tom Selleck being like, "This is my first rodeo," and he's talking about reverse mortgages, and it's always like when
like
your husband dies and you can't afford the bills. And a Car Shield is like, literally, they're like, when you're these cars nowadays have computers in them. How are you gonna get it fixed? And they're selling all these like fucking fugazi criminal products to old people. Like one is there's a commercial for a pill that's like basically like an Alzheimer's deterrent, you know?
Oh yeah.
And you're like it's a mom who's like
I've seen this one.
yeah, like the daughter, she's like the mom's like 80 and the daughter is like 50, right?
Mhm.
And then she's like looking for her keys and she's like, "Where are my keys?" The daughter's gonna leave the house and then the grandma's like, "They're right here." And she's like, "Where's my purse?" "Right over there." It's like, "Mom, how do you know where stuff is, you old hag?" You know what I mean?
How is it possible?
And she's like, "'Cause I'm taking this pill." She literally takes the pill and then becomes Albert Einstein. Like
Right,
it like
right,
poofs, and then she
She's like
has
the
an
guy,
Einstein wig on. It's like, oh my god, this is so fucking depressing, you know?
She has like photographic memory now.
Right, and you're like, oh, and it's called like brainwave. You know what I mean? Like, did you hit a little brainwave? And you're like, but then it cuts back to the show, and you're like, oh my god, it's like all like this great. It'll be like a great conversation between all these smart people, and then you're like, oh no, the commercials are such. They're
Here
terrible.
comes the ad for like boner pills for old people.
These ads have to lose them viewers, right? Because I'm changing the channel. Like they're like,
I'm a lifelong like mute button person. Like I always just mute the commercials and like look at my phone till the show comes back. But I hear you. Like if they're on for a second, it makes me crazy.
Oh my god, it is. You're like, how? Like in today's day and age, like how are they? Like these have to be losing viewership from this stuff. It's not even like, it's not even just like here's the new Subaru. Like that would be fine or something, right?
Yeah,
like here's
Subaru
a new car.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of It's like when I see commercials, I'm like, this isn't making me want this product. Like, who is this for? Like, how many people are watching this who are like, brainwave, need to tell my mom about that, or like, hey, my grandpa can't get a boner. I need to tell him about the name of this pill.
It sucks that my grandpa can't fuck
like
my dead grandma anymore.
About like grandma's complaining constantly that like grandpa can't get it up. Like he needs to know. They could be slow dancing like they are in this ad.
Right, like, are you thinking like old people are not like there probably are, So anyway, there's a great South Park episode about how they take advantage of older people these commercials because they like are if they're like. It's like the jewelry, like that fucking amazing where they're ordering jewelry, because old people are like starting to lose it a little bit, so they start, but they have credit cards, so people are taking advantage of that. Yeah. Anyway, so here's the other thing. Aaron, talking about marketing, have you ever got a flyer like on your either in the mailbox or on your like house or like doorstep, and you've been like, oh, cool, and then called that company?
No, like when they tuck it under your windshield wiper, I hate that. No, I've never responded favorably to that.
Okay, me either. Today, I saw a flyer and was like, oh, that's a service that I needed. It ties into this podcast.
Okay.
And I was like, I called them and had a conversation with them about possibly getting their services from a flyer they sent me.
Really? That you got in the mail?
Flyer.
Let me see.
Waterland. Okay?
Holy macaroni.
Okay.
You know what? Honestly, I have to tell you, that is a product that I have looked at online several times because I want to figure out how to install one of those scenarios in my own home where I'm currently embedded. And I don't know, maybe if I got that flyer, or maybe I already did get it and I put it in the trash. I don't know.
Yeah, so we were talking about, last week we were talking about environmental stuff. Yeah. I'm trying to cut down on all my water bottles situation.
We have to caucus about all this offline.
But I'll let you know, I don't have any information yet because obviously, like, I called them and it's a call service and one of their salespeople has to call me back. And they haven't called me back because one thing you got to know about Los Angeles, no one here is trying to make money. It's the problem with California. Everyone in Los Angeles is slow to the take. Jamie, hello?
Oh, we have a pop in.
My wife is popped in. Jamie Lee. Jamie Lee, you have something you'd like to tell everyone? What? Okay. Well, I have to finish recording before I can make us dinner. All right. Anyway, Jamie, thank
We're
you.
going to be quick because Chef Jamie needs to be fed.
Yes. All right. Now, well, you made it longer because now you've made editing work for me. Okay. Well, anyway, but I'm saying I literally called up from this flyer. Like, I don't think I've ever in my life. But I'm saying, like, it has a thing where they're like, we have fully, it's fully, like, purified water. It's all, it's recyclable. And I was like, all right, let me talk to these guys.
Show me the flyer again?
Yeah. Anyway, so because I'm trying to get rid of all, I'll send you a picture of it. But I'm trying to get rid of all my water bottles. The problem is that, like, I find I have reusable bottles here. Like, I'm drinking out of one now, but they're hard, like, filling them up. I'm like, I couldn't find a filter that fits on my sink to go on my tap.
Oh my god, we have the same problem.
Right, so I had all these problems, and I was like, I also I want water to be, like, super cold. You know what I mean? So I called the service.
I'm very particular about the kind of water that I like, because, like, when I find a water that works for me, I stick with it. And then I fill up my water bottle at work, and it's kind of yucky. So you have to find the right water.
Yeah, anyway, the point is that this ad worked, and also that's a change I'm making from last week's podcast. That's the reason I brought it up, to be more eco-friendly, because that's just like, really cool. And like Sean said about the last, yes, we saw this from last week's podcast. If you haven't listened about global warming, it's really interesting because it seems like we don't actually, look, this stuff's really complicated. It's hard to measure the exact effect. But from all the pollution we've done for global warming, the climate will heat up. The next 100 years of damage, about 100 years of damage seems to be done, right? Yeah. But this will tie into this topic for today as well. But we need to stop it because we need to mitigate it, right? Like, if you're in a car that's on fire, and right, and one passenger died, do you not try to save the rest of the passengers? Right. You're like, no, someone's already burning. Anyway, moving on to the topic at hand here. Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the Supreme Court died on Rosh Hashanah, by the way, which just, if you're a Jewish person, is, and by the way, I am a Jewish person, but just by secular, I'm a matzo ball soup Jewish person. I'm a Holocaust Jewish person, meaning the Holocaust happened, and I exist as a Jew to remind people that that's happened, and to know that I was labeled this thing, whether I wanted to be it or not, but I'm an atheist. I mean, we've been through this. Yeah. My religion is really science, Yes. But anyway, that being said, dying on Rosh Hashanah is actually like a big honor.
Yeah, I heard that.
Right. That's just a random cool thing. And so, yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I mean, it's not surprising based on the year we're living in 2020, which is just cartoonishly insane. Mm-hmm. But this is a whirlwind of a situation, because if you don't know anything about this, which I'm sure you do, there's 9 Supreme Court justices, and her dying is an open seat, which is that 5th seat, which when they put someone, if Trump puts in a conservative Supreme Court justice, would give the majority to the conservatives and put it at a 5-4, I believe, right?
Yeah.
By 5-4 majority. So, I actually had that written here. Yeah, because right now you have Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Justin 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and Chief Justice John Roberts. But the thing is, John Roberts is a lot of times known as not being, he's a conservative judge, but from my understanding is that he reaches across the aisle a lot and is not just full on toe the party conservative judge. So actually, what would this would be 6. So this would be a 6-3 from my count here. Okay, so that means basically, yeah. And how does the Supreme Court work the votes? Do you need 2/3? See, all right, I want to say this before we get into this topic. This is my most confused. Even considering global warming, I'm like, what are my question is this. What is the RGN question of the week? Okay, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing and Trump likely being, which, by the way, how fast the news is moving, my question for the week was, what are the odds that the Republicans will be able to pull off putting a justice in place before the election or before a new president is inaugurated? And that's already a answered question. It's basically 100%.
Yeah.
Right. The only chance they had was Mitt Romney holding out. He already is, he's probably, because he voted to impeach Trump, he's likely trying to get back in the good graces of Republicans. Plus, he's a conservative guy. He's a religious guy.
Yeah.
He likely wants to put it in a conservative judge. Interesting. Mitt Romney, interesting. Hard guy to figure out. From my limited knowledge of Mitt Romney, he's essentially the creator of Obamacare in Massachusetts, right? So it's interesting that he would want to put in a conservative judge who's going to strike down Obamacare, but maybe, I don't know exactly what his feelings are on Obamacare. I don't know. We'll get into it. But yeah, the Supreme Court. Aaron, can you look up in a Supreme Court vote, do you need, because this would cement a 6-3 conservative majority, right? So they have 5-4 right now, but John Roberts would toe the line a little bit. So then 6-3, it's like that's full on conservative majority. But when they vote on stuff, do they need a 2/3? What do they need to get something through? Or no, I think it's just it's majority, right? If you have 9 of them, it would just be like, if it would be 5-4, 5 wins, right? I don't know. I'm pretty sure.
I'm looking into this. You might know more than I do.
I think that is true. So, but with 6-3, this pushes it in a direction where you now have, my guess is, 5 ultra-conservative Supreme Court justices, which means that John Roberts won't be able to, if he goes either way, it won't matter at all, because 5's all you need. That has to be what it is. We're figuring this out as we go, by the way.
Sorry, my high school civics class, I'm kind of failing on that.
Isn't it amazing how that shit just went? I probably got really good grades in that stuff. It's all gone.
No doubt.
Okay, so that was my question, was would they be able to jam this through? It turns out not only yes will they be able to get this through, they'll probably get this person confirmed. Well, they'll get this person probably not confirmed before the election happens, but they'll get this person chosen this week and
Saturday
before Biden or Trump takes office.
Trump is planning to announce it on Saturday.
Right. And it's likely going to be this woman, Amy.
Right. Barrett.
Right? Amy. I can't remember her name for some reason, but we don't have that announced yet. Whatever. The point is that these are really conservative.
She's a Catholic, hardcore Catholic judge.
Right. Okay. So my question really is this: this is going to happen. We know the Republicans. This is how they play the game. The Republicans, honestly, they play dirty. They play really dirty.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get caught up in the conversation that everyone is having right now, which is like, can you believe the hypocrisy here? Look, this is the bottom line. If you could watch tons of video of Lindsey Graham, who is a coward who stands for truly nothing,
Lady G.
Yeah, look at this guy, and you could see them all say when Merrick Garland was Obama's pick for the Supreme Court, which was the spot that I believe Neil Gorsuch got eventually, right? And on the Supreme Court, President Obama was a lame duck president, meaning he was in the last year of, he wasn't coming back to be reelected because he's up, his second term was up. He was 10 or 11 months out from an election, and the Republicans' big argument was, we're so close to an election, in a lame duck presidency, the people should have their say. And you could watch Lindsey Graham literally say, use my words against me. We're setting a precedent here and now. These are the exact quotes that in the last, if the primaries have already started for an election, we wait until the new president decides. And he's like, you could use these words against me. This was in 2016. the general election has already begun right now. People are already voting in the general election. We're like 40 days away. So these people are, this is what politicians are nowadays. I mean, the damage they do here, whatever. That being said, this is the game. I think Democrats would do the same thing, but Democrats are not on tape saying the stuff they said, you know? And the whole big argument that people are saying is it's political suicide for these Republicans to push their justices through. Like, who's voting for these guys? If you're a Republican and you're voting for these guys, likely you just want them to get your Supreme Court justice through. So I don't even think this will even hurt these guys. What it does is just hurts the fucking country, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes us all have no faith in these guys when we've already had this president undermine every institution for the past 3.5 years. So now it's just more trust out the window for government, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that's not the question I want to have, because I get it. I completely understand why they're doing what they're doing. Who cares? It's not that who cares. It's just like, it's uninteresting. They're going to do it. It is what it is. And the main reason they're doing it is because they also think Trump's going to lose. That's the other reason.
Yeah, well, they're doing everything they can.
And not just Trump's going to lose, because it's specifically the Senate. That's another just loop. How crazy of a circumstance this is the Senate has to confirm the Supreme Court justices. And the House is Democrat controlled, but the Senate is not. And the Senate is likely set to flip in 40 days.
Yeah.
And so, insanely, they all know that they likely won't be able to do this. So it's like, look, if you were in their position, you probably would do the same thing.
Like a real Hail Mary situation.
But why say the shit Lindsey Graham was saying in 2016?
I know.
Like, why pretend? Like, now they're being like, well, you know, even Mitt Romney was like, just because what the Republicans doing is wrong doesn't mean that we should do something wrong here. You know, it's like, what would they do what would the Democrats do if the shoe is on the other foot? Look, it's true. If I was one of these guys, I'd be like, fuck it. You think I'm going to give a seat to the Republicans?
Right. Yeah.
You wouldn't do it.
Hell no. Hell no.
But anyway, so my question is this. Yeah. The Supreme Court is locked up. It's going to be 6-3 conservative. We've already heard the stuff that's hanging in the balance. We know, like, the big ticket issues, abortion and whatnot. But what is my question really is, right? What does this really, like, what is at stake here? So that's what I looked up.
Okay. How many articles?
Now I'm gonna more than 2. I'll be honest.
Ooh,
more
this required a deeper dive.
I looked at like 4 articles, and then you sent me a 5th. And I did also some Wikipedia dips as well.
Okay.
And this, yeah. And the
on
reality
this
is
podcast, Wikipedia is a legitimate source.
Absolutely, Wikipedia is basically the Bible here. All right, and I'm gonna get into that after I take my quick pee break. All right. But Aaron, could you imagine having that low of integrity like Lindsey Graham? I understand why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But could you imagine having to, like, look, I watched him on Fox News, a clip of him. Could you imagine being that, like, having to spin that much? Like, you said something that's clearly the opposite of what you're doing in the most, like, could you imagine being that that much of a politician? Like, how two-faced you have to be?
I mean, absolutely. There's like zero, and Lady G has zero integrity. He is spineless, and it would be embarrassing to have been so hardcore in the exact opposite stance that you're taking now because it supports you. It's typical, but it's also shocking.
Right? Like, could you imagine if you like you're Lindsey Graham's wife or something, and you gotta like go out to
Well,
dinner with like another like couple, and they're just being like this guy's fucked. Like, this guy's a liar. You know what I mean? Like, this guy,
I
like,
know he's a
you have to be like,
scumbag.
this guy, wow, what a scum this guy is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't break bread with this guy because I'd just be like, that is like, you know what I
Well,
mean? That is
his
like,
wife has many reasons to be embarrassed to go out to dinner with him.
right.
But
And also, the other thing we're not taking into account is it's likely like the religious element is like,
ugh,
this is like, hey, you're saving, essentially because of the abortion issue. It's like, you can be like,
right.
oh, you're saving the unborn, right? Like, you're doing some
Oh, so
righteous,
many lives.
right?
So many lives.
Which,
Yeah.
which, by the way, okay, we'll get into the abortion issue in a second. But okay, so what the question at stake is: what is at stake here? Like, what's going to happen? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so okay, so first thing is environmental regulations. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it says environmental regulations involving climate change will probably be struck down. With the 5-4 majority, the court has held that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, by the way, I'm reading this from the Boston Globe, which I thought had a really clear, very simple article for a simple man like me.
Regular guy.
Right, by a 5-4 majority. So right now it's going to be right. So like, look how razor thin this stuff is to begin with. Environmental protections. They have held that the Environmental Protection Agency has the authority to regulate greenhouse gases, which we learned last week, essentially is what global warming is. At the simplest level, it's emitting greenhouse gas emissions, which heat up the environment. They stay in the environment, make it hotter, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a new member, the court might overrule that precedent. At the least, the court would probably severely restrict the agency's authority to combat climate change and impose other restrictions on its power to control air pollution and water pollution. So already we've seen in Republican administrations, including Trump's administration, that pollution is okay.
Yeah,
pollution is
not
fine.
a problem. It's fine.
Right.
Planet's doing great.
Air and water pollution. They're just not concerned with it. All these regulations will be pulled back. So, I don't know.
Pulled back in the interest, in like the commercial interests of like big time industries in the United States, right?
Right. Yeah, it would be like for like right now, companies have to spend a shit ton of money to have proper waste management if they emit any kind of, all these companies that emit some kind of toxin or right, like you can't just like release your waste into a stream, which would what we used to.
If you farm cattle, like your cows just can't fart all day long into
Right.
the open air and
right, you have to like put them under, you have to like filter the air and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Right. So okay, cool. So severely, basically the EPA will be handcuffed, essentially.
Great.
Okay. Roe v. Wade, obviously, so that's one environmental regulation. Roe v. Wade, which is the ruling from the 70s, 73, I don't know, giving the white woman a right to choose abortion would probably be overruled. Even without a new member, the right to choose has been hanging by a thread. The best bet is that if Trump has able to add a justice, the right to choose will be gone. Indeed, some members of the court will likely argue that the Constitution forbids states from allowing abortions. Okay, so that I dived further deeper into this topic because, and to be honest, I don't have my ultimate answer. And that's like why I started this podcast. Is my answer is like, how likely is it? Like, can the Supreme Court make abortion illegal in every state, even if they overturn Roe v. Wade? And I don't know the answer to that. I know that would be a big battle, huge battle, probably a battle not even worth attempting, but people will see it as worthwhile. But I mean, then you basically have the federal government versus states, every single state.
Every state, yeah.
I don't actually know, but what I do know is essentially what. So what I've gotten to is what happens if Roe v. Wade is overturned.
Mm-hmm.
What does that exactly mean? Now, but I want to pause for a second and be like, why does this worry me personally? Okay. I see people writing stuff because we know this. My Facebook is been fucked up.
Yeah, if you don't know.
I had a joke. I had a stand-up joke that went viral, and I accepted every friend request that I got. I got like probably 1,000 in a day. And so I have people from all over the political spectrum on my Facebook, which I kind of like, but also it's kind of difficult at times.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are so misguided,
Right.
But I see people saying things like, I don't understand why women have abortions when there's tons of people who want to adopt, And I actually think that comes from a place that comes from it's an idealistic thought. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that is a nice thought that yes, there's a nice thought that I know, Aaron, you're getting worked up. I promise you. I'd say it's a nice thought to think of it in terms of the basic emotionless math of someone has no kid. There are kids that people don't want, and you can hand a kid there. Yes. But it's ignoring so much.
It's ignoring a lot. Like if a baby was grown on a tree and all you had to do was harvest it one day and hand it to a worthy family, then yes, of course we'd all be growing our babies on trees and giving them away.
If it was like a stork situation.
Yeah, exactly. You would redirect the stork to your nearest family who needs a baby.
Right, and I want to say this, by the way, when you say this issue I find is extremely personal to me and my family, as my mom is adopted. My mother was an adopted child. She was adopted into a family for my grandmother. My adopted grandmother was told she was unable to have children. They tried for a long time, and then they adopted a child. Now, interestingly enough, my aunt was born after my mom was adopted because she was able to have a child, which is very cool. But my mom was adopted. So we could have the argument someone didn't want my mother and easily could have aborted my mother. I easily could not have existed, right? So I'm not coming from a place of like, oh, I'm just a man talking about women's reproductive issues. My actual existence is directly tied into this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. Right. But from listening and hearing all these issues, my mother is pro-choice. Yeah. So why would my mother be pro-choice? Right? If she wouldn't even exist. It goes directly against her not existing. Because the issue's too complicated for a simple answer like that. Like pro-life, pro-choice, right?
Exactly. Well, and there's no one size fits all in this scenario because there's so many different factors. In my opinion, all women should have a right to choose if they have a baby or not. It shouldn't be mandated by the government like we're like in a different, this is America. So yeah, while it's great, of course, if you are able to carry a child to term but you can't raise it, there's plenty of families who need babies,
right?
But you shouldn't be forced. This doesn't make any, it's not right.
Right. Well, the interesting thing that I find is I really try to I don't know, maybe I shouldn't, but I really try to understand other people. I go, I can understand why people are anti-abortion in theory. I understand why. Listen. it's not, no one's happy about what's going on there. And look, we're treading old territory. This is an old argument. We can go to all the reasons. I think you've heard it all. I only said that because I see that basic argument of abortion being like, there's tons of families who want it. And it comes from men a lot who are ignoring the fact that a woman has to hold a baby to term. We're not accounting a woman's health into it at all, right? Health concerns.
Like the weight gain, like, no.
Right.
That's voluntary. Like, I don't want to be told that.
Right.
You like cobble this body together for 33 years, and then the government tells you have to like get fat. Like, that's not okay.
And that's also another thing is that like I don't just an element. It's like, doesn't that seem like too far for the government? Like 100%. what that's what I don't really understand. It's like, you think the government, there's going to be like, they even asked this question to Trump when he was running in 2016. He said there should be he literally said it should be penalties for the mother. If like, right? Like, let's say you have one. But the reality of the situation is, like, when it comes down to it, we can argue all day, me and you, whoever you are, about if abortion should be illegal, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is abortions will happen regardless.
Right.
Like they did back in the day, and they'll happen illegally, and people will die. Young women will die. 15-year-old girls will die trying to get underground abortion. So here's my question. So we're not talking about abortion. We're talking about the fact that there are millions and millions of people, a majority of the United States of America, if we go by popular vote, a majority, over 50%. That's what a majority is. Are pro-abortion rights. Okay? So what does it mean if Roe v. Wade is pulled back? That's what I want to know. So that's where the RGN comes in. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what happens? What does that even mean? It feels like they don't talk about this. I watch the news for hours and hours, and they go like, and it's just, right, and it's just like the people get upset with the news because it's so much like fear mongering and doom and gloom, and you're like, listen, abortion's being overturned, and people voted for Trump. They knew what was at stake. I remember Hillary Clinton up there saying this is the most important election of our lifetime. Now this next election, they're saying this is the most important of our election of our lifetime. You knew 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices were at stake. We knew that. That was said already. And sadly, it turns out to be 3, which is crazy, right? Mm-hmm. What does it mean? So if Roe v. Wade is overturned, it means that abortion will be protected. And actually, weird, some of these states, which basically the whole West Coast, Washington, Oregon, anywhere where there were fires, access to abortions will be immediately expanded. New York, This is interesting, New York and Vermont and 4 states and Hawaii, abortion access will be expanded if Roe v. Wade is overturned. They're already prepared. So I don't know if you know this, but all these states have already been putting laws in effect, assuming trigger laws.
Should this case be overturned, these trigger laws would immediately protect the right and say, so it would, they have this in place. So if it was overturned, it's
trigger
likely,
bans.
Yeah, it would remain legal in 21 states and then be prohibited in 24 states. So it would vary. But like you said, a lot of states who maybe were preparing for this moment to come have already signed into law these trigger laws to protect the
right.
So
so there's a bunch of states, and one, the whole West Coast, including Nevada, is protected. Alaska is protected. Essentially, all the states on the West are. It'll be illegal. Montana will still be illegal. Oddly enough, Kansas will be illegal. Will be legal. These are legal, by the way. Legal. Montana legal. New York legal. So Florida legal. So it's interesting. So it almost looks like a little less than half. It'll be illegal. So I mean, the mess this creates of all these religious kids who are going to get knocked up, and flee to these coasts. I just like picturing this apocalyptic, like, first world country where you have literally going to be banners. Literally what's going to happen is Planned Parenthood, which could be defunded if we go forward, but will probably get huge private money, you know what I mean? And we'll start putting ads up in like Texas and all these states being like, come to California if you need help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
and
going
they'll
to be
literally
like
probably have bus services and stuff.
abortion tourism. Like, that's what it will be. Like, you need one, come
Is
here.
that a term you've seen, or you just said that?
I just made that up, but there is a thing called medical tourism where, like, you go to Thailand to get a boob job because
Right.
it's cheap or
Right.
whatever. Mm-hmm.
Oh, hostile. I mean, oh, wow. Yeah, so some of these states like Texas and let's say Arizona, some of these states, they have these trigger bans immediately where the second Roe v. Wade's overturned, abortion is illegal. So, I mean, it's like with COVID-19 going to be going on, and can you imagine the chaos of doing this? Like, because forget about, okay, so that's how abortion works. Okay, we might come back to it, but with that issue, but yeah, I understand someone who feels grossed out by abortion. I hope that you have, because I understand that you feel like it's murder. I see that perspective. I do. I just think you're ignoring the true reality is that it's more. There's two things of it when you come back to it. It's more of a woman's health issue than anything else, and it's impossible to legislate. So what are you talking about? Like, what's so crazy about it is that so many of these libertarians and Republicans are people who want like less laws and less regulation, but they want to regulate a woman's body. I just don't even understand. Plus, I've never seen one person talk about expanding adoption money. Like,
right.
Because my mother, okay, my mother, okay, her biological mother went to a home. It's called a home for unwed mothers. She's a teenage mother. This was a service that she was able to live there. You know what I mean? And because at the time people turned against her and stuff, you know, she was able to go. Every man in her life let her down. You know what I mean? And turn their back on her, including the guy who got her knocked up. Right. This is information I recently learned. Okay. And so she had to turn to this state service to.
Right.
And she chose to have the child. Who knows the exact implication? I don't know exactly why and whatnot. But she was able to go to a place that cared for her until she did and helped her with that. I don't hear any talk about expanding this behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you heard anyone
that
ever?
That sounds, in fact, old-fashioned.
Right.
Like a home for unwed mothers. Like, that doesn't even sound like
right, because it makes kind of no sense. Like, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about, it's like you hear the Republicans are always talking about cutting healthcare for people, cutting like pork barrel. What is it? I always say it's pork barrel. Yeah, that's spending. Like cutting spending, excessive spending. Even though Trump has spent more money than any president ever, or whatever, or the debt is the most
Imagine
ever.
That.
And so you're like, so I just don't hear real plans. So it's the same thing as like if you look at what's the math of like a helmet law. I mean, not to demean, put it on the same level, but it's like, do you really want to pay cops to enforce helmet laws? Like, why can't you and your family decide that abortion's not okay for you guys? What does it have to do with other people?
I mean, it sounds like those minds have already been made up. Like,
right.
Same thing when it comes to wearing a helmet. Like, you know, if you're going to wear one or not, like, you have like decide.
Right. And shouldn't you, if you're a religious person, shouldn't you be able to look into your and your religious person, also you're a patriot, right? Separation of church and state. Wouldn't you be able to, even though you're religious, wouldn't you be able to respect that as well? Right. Like, wouldn't you be able to be like, hey, I realize this is my religion.
Yeah.
Right. So there's too much hypocrisy there. Not to mention, it's too much money to spend to be like, what are you gonna have? You're gonna have to have like abortion police, right?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's going to happen either way, and it's going to happen in like basements illegally, and it's going to create a even more unsafe environment for like women who do need to have them.
Right.
So.
And let's think about how that ties into the next thing. So we're talking about the stakes of this new Supreme Court. So, okay, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, would probably be struck down in its entirety right now. Again, it's been holding on by a string as well. The legality of the Obamacare is currently pending before the court. Trump is currently fighting, actively fighting to get rid of Obamacare, even though he says he's fighting. He wants to have pre-existing conditions. I'm going to play you a clip in a second, the clip that I sent Aaron.
Can't wait.
The legality of the ACA is currently pending, and the outcome of the case would be hard to predict even without a new Trump appointee. With such an appointee, the best bet is that the ACA will be invalidated. Trump's choosing someone who's immediately getting Obamacare. Okay, so cool. So let's say Obamacare is bad. Let's go with that assumption. It's bad. We don't like it. What replaces it? We have a pandemic right now. How are we going to, and we're talking about pre-existing conditions. Does coronavirus count as a pre-existing condition? We don't know the long-term effects of people having corona. Like I said, someone who in my family tree died from a blood clot without having any symptoms. Blood clotting, we know, is a symptom of coronavirus. How are we protecting? Is this stuff covered? You know what I mean?
Right. I don't
know. So here's something I saw. This is all admittedly from CNN. It's from the news anchor Brianna Keeler, who I find to be kind of I actually enjoy her work. I find her to be kind of a no bullshit good interview. She's speaking to Trump's what's his name?
Brian.
It's Brian Morgenstern, but I forget his title. It'll pop up, but he's basically like the spokesman, you know?
Yeah.
What is? Okay, so let's listen to this clip. Aaron, let me know if you can hear this. It's this clip's like 4 minutes long, but I think in its entirety is worth hearing. Okay?
Yeah.
I have it already, and it's a much better plan for you.
It's all ready. That was 6 days ago. Where is the plan, Brian?
The president will roll it out when he's ready to do so, but it will focus on expanding access, reducing costs.
Wait, no, Brian, it doesn't matter. Where is the plan? We're 6 weeks from the election. He'll roll it out when he's ready. People are already voting. He's been promising this over the summer. He's been promising this for years. He's asking the Supreme Court in a moment that it will get soon to get rid of Obamacare. He has to have something to replace that if he's going to make good on his promises. Where is the plan?
He has already eliminated the individual mandate. He has already lowered prescription drug costs. He has already expanded healthcare options and insurance options. He has already expanded telemedicine. He'll have more to say on the subject very soon. I understand
people with pre-existing condition. No, well, there is no plan. These are executive orders. And on the issue of pre-existing conditions, this isn't when the president is talking about a plan. That it seems to be that he's talking about a comprehensive plan. People are concerned. You heard this last week from voters. They're concerned about their pre-existing conditions. You're looking at an estimated 12 million people during this COVID pandemic. It becomes increasingly important who may be losing their employer-provided insurance. So where is the plan that they need and that they should have if we listen to what the president has said? Where is the plan?
Well, I appreciate your persistence. You've now asked me the same question a number of times, and I'll give you the same answer.
I've gotten the answer no times. I've not actually gotten an answer. That's why I'm asking again.
Issue a more comprehensive view, but you can, as I've said, you can get a preview already from the many comments that he's made and the many actions he has taken. He is committed to protecting pre-existing conditions. He is committed. He has already lowered costs. He has already expanded access.
When will he release the plan, Brian?
He will release it very soon, Brianna. And
he's been promising very soon, and he's blown past his own deadlines. Before the election?
He will be very soon. He will be very transparent on this policy as he is with all of his other policies. The American people will never have to guess where President Trump stands on a very important issue.
They will certainly have to guess where he stands on this issue. Let's listen to what he has said over the summer about the timing of his plan.
We're signing a health care plan within 2 weeks. A full and complete health care plan that the Supreme Court decision on DACA gave me the right to do. So we're going to sign an immigration plan, a health care plan, and various other plans.
That's from July 19th.
And nobody will have done what I'm doing in the next 4 weeks. I do want to say that we're going to be
This is August 3rd.
A tremendous health care plan sometime hopefully prior to the end of the month. It's just about completed now. So over the next 2 weeks, I'll be
August
pursuing
7th.
a major executive order requiring health insurance companies to cover all pre-existing conditions for all customers. That's a big thing.
I'll ask you again, Brian. The plan is long overdue. Why is the plan not out?
Brianna, it'll be out very soon. I don't know if you expected me to bring it with me here to this interview, but the president will release it on his timeline very soon, and he will focus on
Brian, he's not
costs,
Brian, to be clear, Brian, he put his timeline out there. That's completely false what you're saying. He's not releasing it on his timeline. He's blown past his timeline. I mean, is there even a plan?
It's his timeline. So there is a plan. He will describe it clearly to the American people. It will reduce costs and expand access and protect pre-existing conditions. And the American people will have a very good look at it, and they'll be very pleased with it.
How is he gonna protect pre-existing conditions with an executive order? You know that's not how it works. He can't do that. He's asking the Supreme Court to get rid of Obamacare, which protects people with pre-existing conditions.
I think some of the best lawyers in the world and in the country have looked at this and helped him with it, and he is very confident that with executive action he'll be able to do that, as he has already publicly stated.
Brian, if that were the case, then Presidents Obama and Clinton wouldn't have gone through that rather pleasant process of going to Congress to get pre-existing conditions protected. You can't just do that with an executive order. That's what the experts say. This is something that requires something more.
I think other experts say differently. I'm not here to speak for President Obama or Clinton. I'm here to speak for President Trump. And what his lawyers have looked at, given the current state of the law, they believe they're on sound footing to do that. So he will do what it takes to protect pre-existing conditions. It would obviously be better if we get Congress on a bipartisan basis to help pass a comprehensive health care plan that will do all these things that the president wants. But if, to the extent they're not willing to play ball, he will use his authority to expand access, lower costs, and protect pre-existing conditions.
All right, people are already voting. We are just several weeks here to the election, so we'll be awaiting that plan that is long overdue from the president. Brian Morgenstern, thanks for being with us.
Okay, so I know it's a long clip, but I thought it was worth it.
It's comprehensive.
Yeah, because I felt like she asked all the right questions. And I watch so much news. It's so rare to see a segment where you're like, hey, like, let's just talk about the thing. No fluff, no how I feel. This is it.
Right.
Where's the plan? I watch Trump all the time. He literally says 2 weeks. There's actually a someone put out, I forgot who it was, put out just a montage of a compilation of every time Trump has said 2 weeks.
Right.
That's his fake timeline he constantly gives out. We have a debate for president. People are already voting in 7 days now on Tuesday, and he has no health care plan. If you remember, about 3 years ago, and now they voted. I don't remember what happened. They voted something to get rid of the Obamacare a big chunk of Obamacare, and now they're trying to dismantle the rest of it. Right.
Right.
And their whole thing was they were celebrating in the Rose Garden, literally high-fiving, and they're like, we're going to repeal and replace. Remember that? Repeal, replace.
Repeal and replace.
There's no replacement still. We're 7 days away from election.
And it's
during a pandemic.
During a pandemic. It's 2020. We're 1 week before the debates. And like Breonna Keeler said, he's blown past his timeline time and time again. It's like 2 weeks, 4 weeks. What I'm about to do, 2 weeks. And then this stooge Brian saying very soon. Like, this clip is already 4 days old. Now we're that many days closer to the debate. Like, what is he even talking about?
Right, so he's going to go into this debate and have no health care plan?
Taken zero action on introducing this
I'm open
plan.
to it. Tell me ACA doesn't work. I don't need to be a party line guy, but I'm like, these people. So, okay, so I looked into it more, okay? So we already know we want to get rid of defund Planned Parenthood. They want to get rid of abortion. So, meaning if a woman has no health care, I don't know how she sees a doctor to oversee a pregnancy, right? I don't know. Right now, you can get access to a almost free abortion in this country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So cool. So I got it. So I don't know how this is protecting people. So I looked into more. If the Supreme Court ends Obamacare, what does it mean? This is from the New York Times. So if you think I'm some liberal elite, I listen. Take this with your New York Times grain of salt. I don't know. Or look this up on your news of preference. But they just had the most clear article, okay, on this. But, okay, what is this? An article just, it's if the Supreme Court ends Obamacare, here's what it would mean. Beautiful, right? That's the name of the article. Came out today.
Ask him the tough questions.
And I can just go right to the headlines. It goes, okay, 133 million Americans, roughly half the population under 65, have pre-existing medical conditions that could disqualify them from buying health insurance policy or cause them to pay significantly higher premiums if the health law were overturned. According to a government analysis done in 2017. An existing medical condition, including some common ailments as high blood pressure or asthma, any of which require those buying insurance on their own to pay much more for a policy if they could get one at all. The coronavirus, which has infected nearly 7 million Americans to date and may have long-term health implications for many of those who become ill, could also become one of the many medical histories that would make it challenging for someone to find insurance. So not right now under the Obamacare, ACA, which a lot, notoriously people didn't know that ACA was the same thing as Obamacare when they were voting last time. You cannot be denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. These insurance companies make money hand over fist. And by the way, this I haven't looked into, Aaron, if you want to Google this now.
Yeah.
How much money has Mitch McConnell accepted from an insurance company? Is there a way we can find that out?
Let's see.
But anyway, so pre-existing conditions are not protected. If you get rid of Obamacare, they're not protected. But Trump has no plan to take care of pre-existing conditions now. So you're taking him at his word when he's already trying to get actively fighting against that now. Okay, what else happens? People could just lose their health insurance of their Obamacare. 23 million people who either buy health insurance through the marketplaces set up by the law or receive coverage through the so 11 million Americans right now buy health insurance through ACA marketplaces. And by the way, if that sounds low, 11 million based on the American population, I believe a lot of those marketplaces got decimated by the original repeal of the law that I'm talking about, the high fives in the Rose Garden. And then some have the expansion of Medicaid, which came through Obamacare, 12 million people. So 21 million people are at serious risk of becoming uninsured if Obamacare is struck down.
Just a fun fact for you, Dan. Total contributions of insurance companies to Congress, for the Republican Party in the Senate, it's been well over 6.5 million that have gone to Republican senators.
When? That's not a lot of money. What, that's 6.5 million?
No, 65.5 million.
Oh, okay. When? And when? Does it say timeline?
It doesn't have a timeline here. And
total? Or does it mean this year? Like, is it...
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at a graph here that's on.
No, absolutely. Listen, we don't pretend to know anything.
Okay, well, here, let me make it easier for you.
Right.
Republicans, just party split, have received $289,790,386 from the insurance business, and that's about 100 million more than the Dems. And Mitch McConnell specifically has profited about just under 3 million from insurance companies.
I saw some graph. I don't know if it was true, but it was Mitch McConnell's wealth going like his salary's $300,000 a year, but his wealth is like crazy high since
his
he's been
personal wealth.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, I don't know that. I think this is like campaign funding.
Yeah.
Which is
shady.
Nothing to shake a stick.
All right, adults who 12 million adults who will lose Medicaid coverage. Medicaid, the government insurance, we're talking about the stakes of Obamacare being repealed. The government insurance program for the poor that is jointly funded by the federal government and the states has been the workhorse of Obamacare. If the health law were struck down, more than 12 million low-income adults who have gained Medicaid coverage through the law's expansion of the program could lose it. Wow. Okay. According to the Urban Institute, enrollment in the program would drop by more than 15 million, including roughly 3 million children who got Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program when their parents signed up. So right now we're talking about that's another 21 million. 133 have pre-existing conditions. 21 million people who are paying members of the marketplace, and then 12 million on Medicaid expansion people will lose. That actually includes some children. And then 800,000 people with opioid addictions getting treatment through Medicaid. Okay. Move past that. 165 million Americans who no longer face caps on expensive treatments. The law protects many Americans from caps that insurers and employers once used to limit how much they had to pay out in coverage each year or over a lifetime. Among them are those who get coverage through an employer. More than 150 million before the pandemic caused widespread job loss. Oh, yeah. More than 150 million. Among those are those who get coverage through an employer. More than 150 million before the pandemic caused widespread job loss, as well as roughly 50 million enrolled in Obamacare and other plans in the individual market. So you can already see, like, less people are enrolled in Obamacare because it's undercut. But imagine if we could expand it and people will be more covered and we have more preventative treatments and stuff. Before the Obamacare, before ACA, Obamacare, people with conditions like cancer or hemophilia that were very expensive to treat often faced enormous out-of-pocket costs once their medical bills reached these caps. Okay. Okay, there's more. 60 million Medicare beneficiaries who would face changes to medical care and possibly higher premiums. 2 million young adults with coverage through their parents' plans. The parents' plan, that's going to go the 26-year-old parent thing. I have a feeling most people are not sympathetic to that either. That feels too nuanced for people. You know what I mean? Because that involves like talking about the less, well, you know, whatever. 50 billion medical care for the uninsured. Okay, so all right, it's ongoing. Not to mention a small thing, but the ACA requires nutrition labels to have calorie consumptions on the menu at chain restaurants. That would go away also.
So when you go to Applebee's or Cheesecake Factory, you know how many calories you're about to eat. I didn't know that was an ACA thing. How about that? Well,
not to mention, ACA lays out how people are paid by insurance really clearly also. Like how the payout structure works. So getting rid of Obamacare with no plan is looks like to be a fucking not an option, really. You know?
Yeah. Like,
so
again, there's
why
no
would Trump not have a plan in the past 3 years? I don't understand. He had at a time had the Senate, the House, and the president, you know, and the executive branch.
Yeah, that's true. And it would have been a great time to roll this plan out. But and this plan he's been talking about that was meant to roll out over the summer is the same plan that he was talking about before they repealed the piece of Obamacare.
Right.
I don't, what's taking so long? Brianna's asking the right questions.
Right. Yeah, so Affordable Care Act.
There is no plan.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess my thing is like, and look, there's a bunch of other stuff we could go into. Like, there, you know, affirmative action programs would probably be forbidden. I imagine that if you're a Republican voter, you're not sympathetic to that to begin with. So, whatever. I mean, you know, I'm trying to just focus on stuff that just kind of makes that, like, you'd have no real argument against, which is, like, we need health care, you know, during this pandemic, if that makes any sense. But the modern regulatory state would be in serious jeopardy. A more conservative court might revive the non-delegation doctrine, which forbids Congress from granting a lot of discretion to regulators such as the EPA and the Department of Transportation. The court might strike down important provisions of the OSHA Clean Air Act. So that's another, basically, It seems to be the other thing they could do is all these like independent government regulatory in agencies, such as like some of these like the Federal Reserve, FCC, nuclear regulatory commissions. Those the president has limited power over these agencies. They operate independently of the executive branch, you know.
Right.
But it's saying, like, under the current law, the president has limited power over such agencies. He cannot order them to do what he wants, which we've seen Trump try to do over and over again, is try to boss around all these independent agencies. 5 members of the court have already signaled their dissatisfaction with the idea of independent agencies. With an additional Trump appointee, the idea might go out the window and all agencies would be under the president's thumb. So that would mean the Trump that would have access over all of these independent agencies, which gives the president way more executive power, you know,
like over the FCC, so like he can decide that it's okay to like show titties on primetime TV and do whatever he wants.
And actually, it would limit there's a whole thing here. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, regulates false and misleading advertising. The Security and Exchange Commission now works to prevent security fraud. The EPA and the Department of Transportation now require fuel economy labels. Many agencies, both state and federal, now require warnings and disclosures. So, this is stuff that I think would just be gone, you know?
Right.
So, there's a lot at stake here. Wow. Ordinary people complaining that the government officials had violated the law would have far less access to the courts. Since the early 1970s, there had been a pitched battle between justices who give broad standing to those who argue that executive branch officials have, for example, failed to protect food and safety. Justices who are skeptical of lawsuits of this kind, a new Trump appointee would fuel that skepticism. Wow. This is civil rights law and voting rights laws would be interpreted more restrictively. Some of them might even struck down. Suppose that an employer has adopted a practice that has disparate impact on women or people of color. It might be a height and weight requirement, or it might be some kind of written test. Can that practice be challenged in court? All right.
Oh, brother.
Anyway, all this is the tip of the iceberg, it says. But, okay,
Yeah.
This is the broad strokes of stuff that I think is interesting. No one's really talking about all this regulation. It will increase the power of essentially the president, which, Trump likes. But, yeah, this is kind of what we're in store for. There will be a big fight. One thing that's really interesting is what I think will happen, and I don't know, I'm just going based on logic, just regular guy logic.
Right. Okay. RGL.
Trump's going to jam through this appointee, and that'll be a short-term win for the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that I believe that we're gonna have a big flip,
Yeah,
and
in Congress.
In Congress, I think that the Democrats are gonna control all three. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's my opinion. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they can expand the amount of Supreme Court justices. There's not set in the Constitution that you have to have 9.
Mm-hmm.
It can be expanded. It can change. So I think there's a chance that they add more justices to the Supreme Court as kind of a backlash against.
That could happen. And an article that I read says that because this is like very few presidents have this opportunity, that Senate, they're willing to take big risks like what you just described in order to get their pick in, to capitalize on this moment, regardless of what risks it might entail.
Right. Yeah. This will be this anyway. We'll see what happens here, but this is going to happen regardless of what happens. Look, we're going to have a 6-3 Supreme Court with a very conservative judge, and things are going to change in this country. And a lot of basic, in my mind, basic rights. We took them for granted in this country, and I think people will have to fight back. The reality is, if you're a coastal elite like I am or whatever, I live here, you'll probably be protected. You'll be shielded from a lot of this, but I see this. I don't know where this goes. These Republicans, I'm be open to them. I want to see plans. Let's see a healthcare plan.
Yeah.
Let's look at it. Show me what your version of Obamacare looks like. If it's going to go to employer-based healthcare, it's not working. It's just simply not working. So
especially
we need
now,
right
where we are with this pandemic.
It's not working. So let's see what their plan is there. I'm not sure. To me, I don't know how you vote. The bottom line here is removing without a healthcare plan, and then removing abortion, which is health. That's women's health. I'm not sure how we do that. And then so I'm open to a plan. If you really want it, let's hear it. Pitch me something logical that is real world based.
Right. There is zero plan. It's not even like you're looking at a plan that they've presented. This is just an empty space.
Not to mention, I just don't see how you can vote Republican when there's no plan to protect the environment. We're seeing the weather patterns are drastically changing. There's these storms are getting worse and worse. You see it in the news. So
there's no plan to protect the environment, and then also, like Brianna Keeler said, there's like half of Americans, or you said half of Americans have pre-existing conditions. So they're in court trying to repeal Obamacare, but there's zero plan. And then what happens to all the people who have, and then those people to vote for Trump? It just doesn't add up. Like, you're overlooking your own health. I don't know at what cost or why.
Right. So anyway, all right. So anyway, I'm open to hearing. Let's hit us up, regularguynews@gmail.com. Write us an email. Tell me what I'm missing, what I'm seeing here from my regular guy's perspective. Okay. Again, I do have a coastal bias. I grew up in New York. I live in California currently. Okay. But I'm just looking at it. I'm trying to understand people from other sides. I really am. And I'm trying to see how you think. So what's the plan to protect women's health if we get rid of abortion? What's the plan? Tell me. Somebody tell me. What's the plan for that? And that will be directly tied into healthcare. What's healthcare? Do we have a plan to pay women for the 9 months they're out of action? Do you know what I mean? Do we have Well, I'm just saying. What are the plans here to our fellow citizens? You know what I'm saying? That's it. So what's the healthcare plan? We don't even have one. 7 days out, people are already voting in the general election. You heard it. You heard it from Trump's. That's his deputy of communication. You heard him deflect in every way possible from a guy gave props to Brianna Keeler, just being, where's this plan? He's been promising this plan. We have no plan. You are trusting Trump, a known liar, cheat. I mean, I don't know how much more proof you need.
Right.
Who's saying, I will protect pre-existing conditions while he is congruently, simultaneously fighting against pre-existing conditions in the Supreme Court. This is what I'm reading. Okay? I'm not you know what I mean? I'm not a lawyer. I'm just reading this. And he has no plan to also replace it. They said repeal and replace 3 years ago. Do we have, that's what I'm saying. So if this is the plan here, show me, and then show me, and then show me some kind of climate change plan. Any kind of plan to stop people from dumping in the water that I swim in and drink.
Right.
Okay? How about just as simple as that? Before we get into greenhouse gases and blah, blah, blah. How about just that? Okay? And that's it. And then also show me where in history also Democrats, I guess because people are just worried about guns, right? Guns.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. I'm also willing, I'll say this, I'm willing to, Second Amendment, I'm willing to scratch that from the blue platform. Just keep your guns.
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to find common ground. The gun thing's fine. You guys want to risk that someone's going to shoot me up at the market? I'm kind of willing to be whatever. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to take all your guns, maybe. Maybe just we want to make sure you're mentally stable before we give you one, or.
Yeah. Anyway, because I don't even know. I mean, school shootings is. For some reason on this country, it's so low on our priority list. Something to try to tackle.
Just shootings
it's so
in
low.
Public in general with fully automatic, serious weaponry. It's a non-issue, even though we have the most in the world.
Anyway, I veered off topic, but anyway,
folks.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I actually I'll give Trump the smallest amount of credit is that there's a video of him finding out that RBG died, and he didn't immediately. I mean, this is how low the bar is for the guy. He didn't immediately say, "I'm going to replace her." He said, "Hey, she lived an amazing life." I'll give him.
Didn't cheer. He said she lived an amazing life because she gave him this tremendous opportunity to appoint someone to the Supreme Court.
I know.
If she would have retired a few years ago, it would. He'd be saying I don't know. I'm not familiar with her. No one's done more for women than me.
But see, I don't get caught up in the shit that people he said the other day is RBG's granddaughter said that she dictated to her that my dying wish is to be replaced by the new president,
right?
Whoever that is. And then Trump was like, it sounds like bullshit. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me that Trump says. Yeah, it's annoying, but I understand that that's where me coming from a place where I'm because that's against where I'm believing or I'm coming from.
Right,
You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, whatever. That's like rhetoric or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's
I'm
just
more
a
focused on
difference-
this shit, which is
Yeah.
like, what is the fucking plan?
Right. I mean, it's just like when Trump says something like that, you're like, well, of course he said it was bullshit. Who's surprised?
Oh, anyway, everybody, thanks for listening to the podcast this week. I gotta tell you, this podcast, the top it is. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about next week. I have no idea.
By next week, we'll already know who Trump's Supreme Court nominee is. We'll find out this weekend.
We already know it's definitely a woman. It's probably what's her Amy Court Barrett or whatever the hell she is.
Coney.
Bad News Barrett and Barrett Coney Barrett. Yeah, and it's there's another woman in the running too, but it's
Cuban woman.
Right. The only thing I could say about Trump is, could you imagine if Trump just chooses like a liberal judge?
No,
like
I can't
that's the only thing about
that,
Trump.
actually.
Can you just imagine if he just chooses like
he should appoint like Kanye
what a
West.
fucking curveball? Can you imagine? He knows the polls are not looking good. His last grasp at votes is to try to get Democrats.
He appoints Kanye to the Supreme Court.
Oh, one thing you got to say about Trump is that he is not effectively at all taking down Biden. I mean, like, that's the one thing
I got to show you this.
What?
If you're watching the video, you can see this.
Yeah.
So speaking of flyers, a friend of mine in Pennsylvania received this flyer in the mail. Dan,
Right.
Can you see?
It's weekend at Biden's. It's like weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Oh, because he's like dead.
Yeah, sleepy Joe Biden, angry Nancy Pelosi with crazy Bernie Sanders. It wouldn't be funny if it wasn't dead serious. Yeah,
well,
so that's the kind of effective messaging.
So that's what I would say. That is funny, but like that's a funny idea.
It's ridiculous.
But that being said, Biden, if you've even paid half a bit of attention, is not sleepy at all.
Not sleepy.
And Trump seems sleepy.
Yes, and let's not forget, Trump is the oldest elected president on record, and then Joe Biden will become the oldest. Trump will be in second place, but he's only a few years older.
Yeah, it's like, and someone was making this great point on the news the other day. They were like, he set the bar so low for Biden because he's just been like, he's Sleepy Joe, the guy's out to sea, and then Biden's coming through completely energetic and clear, and then it's like, and then Trump's trying to bring it back. He's saying like, Joe's a smart guy because he's trying to like raise the stakes because in this debate, Biden's going to come in ready to fucking go. His adrenaline's going to be pumping, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're going to do whatever. He's going to get the Lance Armstrong like blood replacement, right? Like
he's doping. Biden's doping.
He definitely is. He definitely is. He's definitely like gets.
They don't test you for like doping and.
No, you get PEDs all the time. Trump's. Remember Trump saying he's on drugs?
Some stem cell Russian cocktail we don't even know about yet.
And that's the thing. I think Trump does. I think someone also made this great point that Trump does the thing where like when like you're doing something, you blame someone else of it. Like people are like you're gay, but then somebody is gay. They're like the person who says that turns out to be gay.
He who smelt it dealt
right,
it.
like it's exactly that. I just did it in the weirdest way possible. Like someone was like, Trump is like basically claiming that Joe Biden's on drugs, and you're like, is that because he's on drugs? Like, what about Biden? Yeah, but so Biden is my guess. Here's another prediction. Okay, is Biden's gonna be great in this debate? Is gonna be great. Obviously, Trump's gonna. I mean, there's so many things he's gonna have to. He plays these hits over and over, which is like it's China's fault. China I can't believe this plays to anybody. You're like China. You're like all these countries got this virus under control. Like there's no argument. There's no like South Korea. These guys have deaths in some of these countries less than 1,000.
China had less than 5,000. We have 200,000. Okay, like it's a failure. There's no way to cover it like on any level. So anyway, it's gonna be really interesting. But also I'm saying it's like his messaging seems to be like
Biden is Sleepy Joe. He's sleeping at the wheel, and he's painting it like he's like, if Biden's in office, there will be no God, literally. And you're like, dude, he was the VP. This guy's been around for 40 years. You know,
and he's like a well-known, like he's known to be like a Catholic man of faith. Like he's not.
Yeah.
Godless.
Anyway, I know.
Anyway, well, we'll be coming back with next week's episode the day of the debate, by the way. So
yeah, maybe we'll record after the debate.
Maybe we'll record a special evening edition of the Regular Guy News. Anyway,
so you guys, you heard a little bit of what's at stake here. It's complicated shit, but I think at the bottom line, at the end of the day, the two big things on the line is the three in my opinion, three big things on the line from this RBG replacement is abortion rights, which ties directly into the Affordable Care, which is your insurance, health insurance, which is more important than ever. But assuming now that we have this pandemic, we need to protect people from these big corporations. And then also a lot of these regulatory agencies, these independent agencies and environmental protection agencies will lose a lot of their autonomy, it seems like, over time. So it seems like we're putting more trust. The bottom line is this all really comes down to, do you trust this president? We'll give him more power over these agencies, and we're trusting him that he has a health care plan, which we haven't seen in 3.5 years. Yeah. So, it is what it is.
We'll see.
All right, everybody, hit us up, regularguynews@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, the way to pay us is by telling one person about this pod, the Regular Guy News. Absolutely. Stop listening to Serial over and over again, guys. Serial's done.
No, I know. Adnan's innocent. We get it.
We get it. We get it. Adnan did it. He did it.
What about the phone call? What about the Nisha call?
It was pings. There was a lot of pings. Cell tower pings.
Payphone at the Best Buy. Okay. Anyway.
But shoot us an email. Write us give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And Aaron, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for coming out on the field. And everybody, thank you for listening to the Regular Guy News RGN. And everybody, I say it every week, and I'll say it again. Look yourself dead in the eyes in that mirror and stay regular.